In this video, I want to talk about the two new definitions of knowledge that you have in the reading. And we'll start with this one here, which is on page 53. And so you can see that this definition is different than Descartes' definition because the justification that is required is, well, it's not so strict. So here we can have knowledge. Our belief is going to be justified as long as we have good evidence for the belief. So we no longer require indefeasible evidence, which of course you know Descartes required. So what kind of justification do we mean when we say we have to have good evidence for a belief? Well, according to Locke, and Appia talks about this at length in sections 2.4 and 2.5, but basically what Locke had in mind was that the evidence had to be good sensory evidence. So a belief was justified, or a belief is justified, if it was caused by getting a good, clear look at something, or hearing something clearly, something along those lines. Or a belief can also be justified if it's derived from other beliefs that are justified by good sensory evidence using the principle of deduction for justification. So through one of these two routes, if we have a justified belief, and of course the other two conditions are also met, then according to Locke, we do have knowledge. All right, so let's look at an example here. Let's just say that, well, so it doesn't actually say an example, but let's say that Tom has the belief that the roommate's father is in his house. And let's also say that it's true. The example also leaves that out. And so the further question then is Tom's belief justified? And so based on what Locke had in mind as justification, we would say that Tom's belief is justified. So he sees this person, he speaks to him, the guy speaks back to him. So, and here, in fact, we have a case where Tom's interacting with the guy through more than one sense. He sees him visually, he also hears the guy respond to him, also gives him a slap on the back, so he knows that he's not just a hologram. Well, if he is hallucinating, he's at least having the hallucination that he's touching the guy. So in this case, Tom has a lot of very good first-hand sensory evidence that this guy, a person who looks just like the roommate's father, is in his house. And so based on Locke's definition, here all three of the conditions are met. He believes it, let's just say it is true, and in this case he does have good sensory evidence for his belief. Now, of course, as Appia says, Locke's definition can run into problems, and so if it were the case, let's say that the roommate's father had a twin brother, and it was the twin brother that Tom saw, maybe the father's also somewhere in the house, so Tom does have a true belief that he's seeing, or Tom does have a true belief that the father's in the house, but he's actually seeing the twin, then he would still have all the same sensory information, but we wouldn't want to say that Tom knows that the roommate's father is in his house in that case. So this definition, Locke's definition, can run into those types of problems, but nevertheless, Locke's definition is one which most people have in mind as sort of the common sense or intuitive definition for knowledge. Okay, so let's look at our other definition, which is this one here, which is what I've taken here is on page 77. So you can see in this case what's different about this definition is again the justification condition. And here, a belief is justified if it has been caused in a way that is reliable in the circumstances. So every belief is caused in some circumstances, and according to this definition, a belief is justified when the circumstances that caused it are reliable ones. Or actually, a better way of saying that is, in the circumstances that we're in, we want the belief to have been caused in a reliable way, or caused by a reliable method. So let's look at an example where this definition works well. Now, in this case, you don't have a lot of information about the example itself, but let's just say that the definition works here because all three conditions are met. So Mary has this belief that the 24-hour post office is near the long-term parking lot. Let's also say that it's true. And the important thing here for this definition is that Mary has acquired this belief by a reliable method. So let's say that the roommate is generally a trustworthy person. Let's say that the roommate is someone who's familiar with the area, someone who's been to that post office before. And so Mary acquired her belief from this well-informed person, so it's fair to say that she acquired her belief by a reliable method. So consequently, according to the causal definition of knowledge, we could say that Mary does know that the 24-hour post office is near the long-term parking lot. Now notice that Mary also acquired Mary's belief is also justified by good sensory evidence. Presumably, Mary heard what the roommate said, clearly. Maybe they were, talking face to face. So Mary would also, Mary would also have knowledge based upon Locke's definition of knowledge, but it would be for a different reason. And so you can see how the two definitions how the definitions differ, Locke's and the causal definition, by considering how the justification is explained differently, either by a reliable method or by having good sensory evidence. Okay, so here's our last example. And again, in this case, we'll consider this example from the point of view of the causal definition of knowledge. So we want to know if, based upon that definition, Patty knows that this student is a Drexel student. So let's see what we have here. She believes that the student she sees is a Drexel student, so she does have the belief, and for whatever reason it turns out that the person is a Drexel student, so she has a true belief. But the question is her belief that this person is a Drexel student, is that justified based upon the causal definition of knowledge? So we have to ask, was her belief caused in a way that is reliable in the circumstances? Well, the circumstances that Patty is in is she's standing on Penn's campus. So she's looking around Penn's campus, and looking around Penn's campus is a reliable way of getting the belief there's a Penn student, but it seems to be the case, I think most people would agree, that looking around Penn's campus is not a reliable way of acquiring the belief, or at least not a reliable way of acquiring the true belief, there is the Drexel student. Looking around Drexel's campus is a reliable way of acquiring the belief there's a Drexel student. But looking around Penn's campus is not a reliable way of getting the true belief there's a Drexel student. So we wouldn't want to say, based upon the causal definition of knowledge, and in this case it seems to be intuitively correct that Patty doesn't have knowledge, but we wouldn't want to say, based on the causal definition of knowledge, that Patty knows that this student is a Drexel student.